The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of Michael Bennett's downtown Savannah apartment, illuminating dust particles that danced in the golden light. At 30, Michael had built what he considered a good life: stable job at a respected architectural firm, a circle of friends he trusted, and most importantly, a relationship with Allison Reed that had weathered 3 years of life's ups and downs. He adjusted his glasses and checked his watch. Allison was running late again, the third time this week. Michael tried to dismiss the knot forming in his stomach. The past few months had brought subtle changes in her behavior: missed dinners, vague explanations, sudden work emergencies that pulled her away on weekends. Each time he chose to trust rather than question. Just being supportive, he murmured to himself, straightening the simple but elegant dinner table he'd prepared. The shrimp and grits, Allison's favorite southern comfort food, were staying warm in the oven. His phone buzzed with a text. "Working late again. Don't wait up, A." Michael sighed, removing his apron and turning off the oven. These terse messages had become commonplace, replacing the affectionate texts filled with heart emojis they once exchanged. As he stored the uneaten meal in containers, his gaze fell on a framed photo of them from last year's riverboat cruise along the Savannah River, her auburn hair catching the sunset, both their smiles genuine and unforced. "It's just a busy period at work," he reassured himself aloud, the empty apartment absorbing his words without response. The following evening, Michael sat on their small balcony overlooking Forsyth Park, the evening breeze carrying the scent of magnolias and the distant sound of a street musician's saxophone. His laptop balanced on his knees as he finalized designs for the historic district renovation project that had consumed his working hours for months. The door clicked open and Allison entered, her high heels echoing on the hardwood floors. When she appeared in the doorway, Michael noticed the subtle differences that had accumulated in recent weeks: the more expensive clothes, the slightly altered hairstyle, the unfamiliar perfume that wasn't from the bottle he'd given her for Christmas. "Hey, you're home earlier than I expected," he smiled, setting aside his work. "Don't get used to it," she replied, with a half-hearted laugh, dropping her designer handbag on the couch. "I'm just here to change. We've got a client dinner. On a Friday, that's the third one this month." Michael tried to keep his tone light, but a note of hurt crept in nonetheless. Allison rolled her eyes slightly. "That's how careers advance, Michael. Not everyone wants to stay in the same comfortable position forever." The barb stung more than she probably intended, or perhaps exactly as much as she intended. Michael watched as she disappeared into their bedroom, the door closing with finality. Their once easy conversations had morphed into these brief, tension-filled exchanges. The woman who used to curl up beside him during thunderstorms now seemed to occupy a different orbit entirely. Saturday morning found Michael alone again, sipping coffee at their favorite cafe on Broughton Street. Jacob and Chloe, supposedly his closest friends since college, sat across from him, exchanging glances that Michael couldn't quite interpret. "So how are things with Allison?" Jacob asked, stirring his latte with unusual focus. "Fine," Michael answered automatically, then paused. "Actually, no. Something's off. Has been for weeks. She's distant, defensive. I'm starting to wonder if..." "If what?" Chloe interjected too quickly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "If she's losing interest." Michael studied their reactions carefully. "You two would tell me if you knew something, right?" "Of course," Jacob replied, his gaze shifting to the street outside. "But relationships go through phases. Don't overthink it." Chloe nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. And Allison's been under a lot of pressure with that new executive, James Crawford, taking over the marketing department." Michael's eyebrows rose. "She calls him Jay. She never mentioned he was new." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Chloe suddenly became fascinated with her phone, while Jacob cleared his throat repeatedly. The conversation moved on to safer topics, but a seed of suspicion had been planted. That night, while Allison showered, Michael found himself doing something he'd never imagined, standing in their bedroom, staring at her unlocked phone on the nightstand. "This isn't me," he whispered, battling his conscience. But the weeks of doubt and distance propelled his hand forward. One touch, and the screen illuminated with a text notification. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Jay misses his alley cat." The bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam. Allison emerged wrapped in a towel, her expression transforming from surprise to cold anger when she saw Michael holding her phone, the message clearly visible on the screen. "So now you're spying on me?" Her voice was ice, devoid of the guilt or shame he might have expected. "Who's Jay?" Michael asked quietly, already knowing the answer, already feeling the ground crumbling beneath his feet. Allison snatched the phone from his hand. "Don't act dumb, Michael. It doesn't suit you." And in that moment, in the steam-filled bedroom of their Savannah apartment, with the sound of distant riverboat horns floating through the open window, Michael Bennett felt the first real crack spread across the crystal surface of the life he thought he'd built. The kitchen was uncomfortably silent the next morning. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting intricate patterns on the reclaimed wood table, a weekend flea market, find they had once celebrated with champagne. Now it merely served as a barrier between them, loaded coffee mugs steaming like small volcanoes ready to erupt. "We need to talk about this," Michael finally said, his voice steadier than he expected. Allison leaned against the counter, arms crossed defensively. She looked immaculate even at this early hour, as if prepared for a hasty exit. "There's not much to talk about." "Not much to talk about," Michael repeated, disbelief edging into his voice. "I saw the texts, Allison. How long has this been going on?" She sighed with theatrical impatience. 2 months, if you must know." The simple admission hit Michael with unexpected force. 2 months. While he'd been working late on the Historic District project, while he'd been planning their weekend trips to Tybee Island, while he'd been looking at engagement rings, she'd been with someone else, with her boss. "It's James Crawford, isn't it? Your marketing director." It wasn't a question. Allison's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. "Yes, it's Jay." A small, satisfied smile played at the corners of her mouth. "And he's actually the VP of marketing, not just a director." Michael stared at her, searching for any sign of the woman he'd fallen in love with, the woman who'd once spent an entire Sunday helping him nurse an injured cardinal back to health, who'd cried during every Pixar movie they'd watched together. The woman looking back at him now was a stranger, cold and calculating. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why?" Allison laughed, the sound brittle in the morning quiet. "Because I needed more, Michael. More than this." She gestured around their apartment with dismissive contempt. "More than weekends spent watching your stupid sci-fi movies or playing those childish video games. I needed a real man, someone with ambition, not some architect content to renovate old buildings instead of designing something that matters." Each word was precisely aimed, hitting vulnerabilities he'd only ever shared with her. Michael felt something shift inside him, not breaking but hardening. "And Jacob and Chloe, they know, don't they?" Allison shrugged. "Everyone knows, Michael. They've just been too embarrassed for you to say anything. That's why they've been avoiding our usual Sunday brunches." The realization that his closest friends had betrayed him cut almost as deeply as Allison's infidelity. The people he'd helped move apartments, whose hospital rooms he'd sat in, whose secrets he'd kept, they had all chosen to protect Allison's deception rather than spare him this pain. "I'm moving in with Jay," Allison continued, scrolling through her phone casually. "I've already packed most of my essentials. I'll send for the rest later." Michael absorbed this information silently. Then, surprising both of them, he smiled. "What's so funny?" Allison demanded, suddenly uncertain. "Nothing," Michael replied calmly. "I'm just thinking about how predictable this all is. The secret affair with the boss, the cruel exit, using my friends against me. It's like you're following a script from one of those stupid movies I love." Allison's composure slipped for the first time. "What are you talking about?" Without answering, Michael stood and walked to the hall closet. He pulled out a pre-packed weekend bag that had been sitting there for nearly a week, ever since he'd first seen the unfamiliar cologne on her scarf, ever since Jacob had avoided his eyes when mentioning Allison's late nights at the office. "What's that?" Allison asked, confusion replacing her smugness. "I'm not an idiot, Allison. I've known something was wrong for weeks. I just needed to hear you admit it." Michael's voice remained calm, detached almost. "You can have the apartment this weekend. It'll give me time to figure out next steps." "You're leaving?" The script had called for him to beg, to break down. His dignity seemed to irritate her more than any angry outburst could have. "Yes. And by the way, Jay's wife knows about you. She was at the Riverwalk Gala last month. The tall woman in the silver dress who couldn't take her eyes off you two. Might want to mention that to your real man." Allison's face paled slightly. "How you're lying." Michael shouldered his bag. "Believe what you want, you usually do." He walked to the door, then turned back. "One more thing. When you and Jay finish destroying whatever's left of my reputation, and I know you will, just remember that some people keep receipts." He left her standing in the kitchen, her perfectly composed facade finally beginning to crack. The humid Savannah air hit Michael like a wall as he emerged onto the street. Spanish moss swayed gently from the oak trees lining the cobblestone walkway. Tourists ambled past with their guidebooks and cameras, and somewhere nearby, a street performer played a mournful tune on a violin. The normality of it all seemed obscene after the implosion of his life. He walked without direction, eventually finding himself at Forsyth Park. Couples strolled hand in hand around the fountain, reminding him of his first date with Allison 3 years earlier. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages, first from Allison, then from Jacob and Chloe. Their sudden concern too little and far too late. After an hour of aimless wandering, Michael found himself in front of the Riverfront Inn, a small, weathered hotel on the outskirts of the historic district. The elderly owner, Pete Williams, looked up from his crossword puzzle as Michael entered. "Need a room, son?" the man asked, his accent thick with Georgia honey and years. "Yes, sir. For a week, maybe longer." Pete studied him with wise eyes that had seen decades of human drama play out within these walls. "Running from something or toward something?" Michael considered the question. "Neither. Just standing still for a while." The old man nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Room 212 has a view of the river. Not much, but it's quiet." "Quiet sounds perfect," Michael replied, accepting the old-fashioned key. In the sparse but clean room, Michael finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of the day's revelations. He sat on the edge of the bed, his carefully maintained composure beginning to crumble. But instead of the breakdown he expected, a strange calm settled over him. He turned off his phone, pulled out his laptop, and began to type. If Allison and her new lover thought he would simply fade away in disgrace, they had severely underestimated Michael Bennett. They had no idea what was coming. 3 days passed in the sanctuary of Room 212. Michael emerged only for meals at the small diner across the street, where the waitresses quickly learned to bring his coffee black and ask no personal questions. The Riverfront Inn became his fortress of solitude, a place where Pete's knowing nods replaced the need for conversation, and the distant sound of cargo ships on the Savannah River provided a soothing soundtrack to his thoughts. On the 4th morning, Michael finally powered on his phone. The screen immediately lit up with a barrage of notifications, 37 missed calls, 64 text messages, and countless social media alerts. As he scrolled through them, a pattern emerged that turned his stomach. "I always knew there was something off about him," read a post from Jacob on Facebook, accompanied by sympathetic comments from their mutual friends. The way he tried to control her every move. A text from his co-worker Gemma. "People are saying things about you at the office. Call me." Even his mother had left a concerned voicemail. "Michael, what's this I hear about you and Allison? She called me crying. Please tell me it's not true." The narrative being spun was as calculated as it was false. According to Allison's version, now being eagerly spread by those he'd once trusted, Michael had been controlling, emotionally manipulative, and possibly worse. His dedication had been reframed as obsession, his trust as naivety, his love as weakness. "Classic," he muttered, recognizing the strategy. Destroy the victim's credibility before they can tell their side of the story. Make any defense sound like desperate lies. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Pete stood there, holding a newspaper and wearing a concerned expression. "Thought you might want to see this," the old man said, handing over the Savannah Morning Herald. Local business section. There, in the People on the Move column, was a photo of James Crawford, his arm possessively around Allison's waist at some corporate function. The caption announced his promotion to Executive Vice President of Marketing at Coastal Dynamics, the medical technology company where Allison worked in public relations. "Thanks, Pete," Michael said, folding the paper carefully. "That the fella?" Michael nodded. "And the lady?" "My ex. As of 4 days ago." Pete leaned against the doorframe, his weathered face thoughtful. "Been running this place 37 years. Seen all kinds of heartbreak come through those doors. Yours has a different feel to it. How so? Most folks come in here broken. You came in bent, but not broken. Pete tapped the newspaper. Just remember, son, folks who build themselves up by tearing others down, that foundation don't last. With that pearl of wisdom, Pete left Michael to his thoughts. Later that afternoon, Michael ventured out to a coffee shop several blocks from his usual haunts. He needed to think, to plan, but most importantly to assess the damage being done to his professional reputation. The architecture firm where he worked had sent several increasingly concerned emails about his absence. The cafe was busy with the afternoon crowd. Michael found a corner table and opened his laptop, keeping his head down, but Savannah, for all its size, functioned like a small town in many ways. "Michael?" a female voice asked. He looked up to see Juliana Matthews, one of Allison's friends from her yoga studio. Michael braced himself for an accusation or a scene. Instead, Juliana glanced nervously around before sliding into the chair across from him. "I've been trying to find you," she whispered. "If you're here to deliver more of Allison's lies—" "I'm not," she interrupted, her eyes earnest. "I'm here because I can't be part of this anymore." Michael studied her carefully. "Part of what?" "The lies. What they're doing to you." Juliana pulled out her phone. "Allison added me to a group chat where they're coordinating what to say about you. It's all planned. Who tells which lies, when to post them, how to respond if you try to defend yourself." She slid the phone across the table. Michael scrolled through messages that confirmed his worst suspicions. There were Allison's instructions to their friends, Jay's suggestions for especially damaging rumors, and timestamps for when to release each new piece of misinformation. "Why are you showing me this?" Michael asked, his voice carefully neutral. Juliana took back her phone, her hands trembling slightly. "Because you're not the first. Before you, there was Mark Davidson in the research department. Same pattern. Allison began seeing him. Jay promoted her. Then they systematically destroyed Mark when they were done with him. He had to leave town. And before Mark, there were others." The revelation should have shocked Michael, but instead, it confirmed a theory taking shape in his mind. This is how Jay operates, isn't it? Use Allison to target men who might threaten him professionally, then destroy them when they're no longer useful. Juliana nodded. "Allison gets promotions and status. Jay gets whatever Jay wants. And his wife? Elizabeth? She knows. Everyone thinks she's this clueless socialite, but..." Juliana lowered her voice further. "She's been documenting everything. For years." The cafe door opened and Juliana stiffened. Chloe had entered with two women Michael recognized from Allison's office. "I have to go," Juliana said, rising quickly. "They can't see me talking to you." "Wait. Check your email tonight," she whispered, then walked away, pretending not to know him as she passed Chloe's group. True to her word, an email arrived that evening from an anonymous account. It contained screenshots, dates, names, a documentary trail of Jay and Allison's past manipulations. The pattern was always the same. Identify a target, isolate them from their support network, replace authentic relationships with controlled ones, then destroy the target's reputation when they were no longer needed. Michael's phone rang as he was reviewing the evidence. Unknown number. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Mr. Bennett." The voice was female, cultured, with the subtle drawl of old Savannah money. "My name is Elizabeth Crawford. I believe we have a mutual problem." Michael's heart raced. "Mrs. Crawford." "Elizabeth, please. I'm sitting in my car outside your hotel. I think it's time we had a conversation about my husband and your former girlfriend." From his window, Michael spotted the sleek black Bentley parked across the street. A woman sat in the driver's seat, phone to her ear, her posture radiating the kind of confidence that came from generations of privilege. "I'll be right down," he said. As Michael headed for the door, his phone pinged with a new notification. The architectural firm had placed him on administrative leave, pending an investigation into concerning allegations. The smear campaign was working. But for the first time since leaving his apartment, Michael felt something besides numbness or anger. He felt the stirring of purpose. With Juliana's evidence, and now Elizabeth Crawford's unexpected alliance, perhaps there was a way to reclaim not just his reputation, but his dignity. He straightened his shoulders and walked downstairs to meet the woman who might help him turn the tide. The interior of Elizabeth Crawford's Bentley smelled of expensive leather and subtle perfume. She was older than Michael had expected, perhaps mid-40s, with a graceful elegance that belied the steely determination in her grey eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, and a single strand of pearls adorned her neck. Old money Savannah through and through. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her manicured fingers tapping lightly on the steering wheel. "I'm curious why the wife of the man who's sleeping with my ex-girlfriend wants to talk to me," Michael replied frankly. A thin smile crossed Elizabeth's face. Directness. Refreshing. She reached into a leather portfolio and withdrew a USB drive. "Do you know what this is, Mr. Bennett? I assume it contains evidence of your husband's indiscretions." "Oh, it's far more than that." She turned slightly to face him fully. "This contains 5 years of documentation. Financial records showing company funds diverted to pay off previous situations. Emails detailing character assassination campaigns against former employees, and most recently, the coordinated effort to destroy your reputation." Michael studied her carefully. "Why show this to me? Why not divorce him and take him to the cleaners?" Elizabeth's laugh was crisp, like fine crystal being tapped. "Divorce is messy, Mr. Bennett. Without ironclad evidence of marital and professional misconduct, James's lawyers would ensure I'd walk away with far less than I'm entitled to. And I've worked too hard building the Crawford name in this city to settle for that. So you've been gathering evidence. For years. But I need something recent, something undeniable, something that would make James's position at Coastal Dynamics untenable." She handed him the drive. "That's where you come in." Michael pocketed the USB. "What exactly are you proposing?" "An alliance of convenience. The annual company gala is happening next Friday night at the Savannah River Club. Every executive, board member, and key client will be there." Elizabeth's perfectly lined lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I want you to attend." "I wasn't invited." "You will be. As my personal guest." Michael raised an eyebrow. "And what happens at this gala?" "Justice, Mr. Bennett, for both of us." Back in his hotel room, Michael examined the contents of Elizabeth's USB drive. The scope of Jay's manipulation was staggering, a systematic pattern of emotional and professional sabotage that had claimed numerous victims over the years. Allison was merely his latest accomplice, though she appeared to be the most enthusiastic one. His phone rang, displaying his office number. "Michael Bennett," he answered professionally. "Michael, it's Gemma Harris." His co-worker's voice was hushed, as if she were hiding somewhere to make the call. "I need to talk to you." "Not over the phone. I'm staying at the Riverfront Inn, room 212. I'll be there in an hour." When Gemma arrived, her usual polished appearance was rumpled, her eyes darting nervously as she entered his room. She immediately pulled out her own phone and showed him dozens of screenshots. "They've been sending these emails through the company system, trying to make it look like you were harassing female co-workers," she explained. "But the IT guy is my cousin, and he noticed the timestamps were off. Someone backdated them to make it look like they were sent months ago." Michael felt a wave of gratitude. "Gemma, why are you helping me? You barely know me." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Because before you it was Ryan in accounting, and before that David in legal. This isn't just about affairs or office politics. It's a pattern of destroying people, and I've been documenting it." Another ally. Another piece of the puzzle. "There's something else," Gemma added. "Mark Davidson didn't just leave town after what they did to him. He's been gathering evidence too, building a case. He's working with a lawyer in Atlanta now." "Can you connect us?" She nodded. "Already texted him your number." Over the next few days, Michael's hotel room transformed into an impromptu command center. Mark called from Atlanta, his voice still bearing the scars of his encounter with Jay and Allison. Juliana provided more internal communications. Gemma brought IT records showing the fabrication of evidence against him, and Elizabeth Crawford supplied the final crucial pieces, financial records showing company resources used for personal vendettas. Meanwhile, the smear campaign against Michael intensified. Former friends posted thinly veiled accusations on social media. Rumors circulated through professional circles. His landlord called to express concerns about his continued tenancy in the apartment. Through it all, Pete became an unexpected source of stability, bringing coffee and his quiet wisdom each morning. My Agnes, rest her soul, used to say that truth needs no defense, just patience, the old man offered one day. Seems to me you're gathering quite a lot of truth in this room. The night before the gala, Michael received a large package from Elizabeth. Inside was an exquisitely tailored Tom Ford tuxedo with a note that simply read, "Armor up." As he tried it on, his phone pinged with an email from his firm's HR department requesting a formal meeting to discuss serious allegations of workplace misconduct. The timing wasn't coincidental. Jay was moving to deliver the professional killing blow. Mark called later that evening. "Just got word from my attorney. We have enough for a civil case, but if we can get concrete proof of them using company resources and systems to fabricate evidence, we're looking at potential criminal charges." "What kind of proof?" Michael asked. "Recorded admission. Documented evidence of collusion using company property." "Leave that to me," Michael replied, thinking of Elizabeth's plan for the gala. He hung up and walked to the window, looking out at the Savannah River where cargo ships moved silently through the night. For weeks, he'd been reacting, first to Allison's betrayal, then to the systematic destruction of his reputation. Tomorrow night, that would change. His phone buzzed with a text from Juliana. "Allison knows something's up. She's nervous." "Be careful tomorrow." Michael sent a simple reply. "Always am." As he laid out the tuxedo for the following evening, he thought about how different his life had become in just 2 weeks. The man who had left that downtown apartment with a single weekend bag was not the same one preparing to attend a gala as Elizabeth Crawford's surprise guest. That man had trusted blindly. This one had evidence. That man had been a victim. This one would be an architect of justice. The final piece arrived just before midnight, a small package delivered by courier. Inside was a state-of-the-art recording device disguised as a tie pin, courtesy of Elizabeth Crawford. The accompanying note read, "Some family heirlooms are more useful than others." Michael smiled as he pinned it to the tuxedo's lapel. Tomorrow night would indeed be a gala to remember. The Savannah River Club glittered like a jewel against the night sky, its antebellum architecture illuminated by strategically placed spotlights. Luxury cars deposited guests at the entrance, where staff in crisp uniforms verified invitations and directed arrivals toward the grand ballroom overlooking the water. Michael adjusted his bow tie as Elizabeth's Bentley pulled into the valet line. The recording device on his lapel felt impossibly conspicuous, though he knew it was virtually undetectable. "Nervous?" Elizabeth asked, her voice calm despite the stakes. "Focused," Michael replied, surprised to find it was true. The paralyzing shock of Allison's betrayal had been replaced by something steadier, more purposeful. Elizabeth placed a gloved hand on his arm. "Remember, timing is everything. We need them comfortable and confident before we make our move." The valet opened Elizabeth's door, and Michael followed her out. He could feel eyes on them immediately. Elizabeth Crawford rarely attended company functions, and never with an escort other than her husband. Whispers followed them as they entered the ballroom. Inside, the cream of Savannah society mingled with Coastal Dynamics executives. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over arrangements of white roses and magnolias. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner. It was exactly the kind of sophisticated gathering Allison had always longed to be part of, the world she had betrayed Michael to enter. Elizabeth navigated the crowd with practiced grace, making introductions. "This is Michael Bennett, a talented architect working on the historic district revitalization. Michael, this is Senator Hayes and his wife." They worked the room methodically, establishing Michael's presence while avoiding the area where James Crawford held court near the bar, Allison at his side in a red dress that cost more than a month of Michael's rent. "They've spotted us," Elizabeth murmured behind her champagne glass. "James looks furious. Allison looks like she's seen a ghost." Michael didn't turn to look. "Good. Let them stew." As the evening progressed, Michael carefully positioned himself near various board members, dropping subtle comments about the company's commitment to integrity. All the while, the recording device captured every conversation around him. At precisely 9:30, Elizabeth's phone chimed with a text. She smiled. "Juliana and Gemma are in position. Time for Phase 2. They made their way to the raised platform, where the CEO would soon give his annual address. Elizabeth spoke briefly with the audio-visual technician, who nodded and handed her a small remote. "Mrs. Crawford." James's voice cut through the ambient noise as he approached, Allison trailing behind him. "What an unexpected surprise to see you here." His smile was tight. eyes darting between his wife and Michael. "And with company, no less." "James," Elizabeth replied coolly, "I believe you know Michael Bennett?" Jay's jaw tightened. "Of course. Michael, I heard you were taking some time off." "Just regrouping," Michael replied calmly. "Elizabeth has been extraordinarily supportive." Allison stepped forward, her expression a mixture of anger and uncertainty. "What is this? What are you doing here?" "Attending a gala," Michael answered simply. "As Elizabeth's guest." Jay placed a possessive hand on Allison's waist. "Well, this is certainly awkward, considering the circumstances. Perhaps it would be best if you left, Michael. We wouldn't want any scenes." "Scenes?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "Like fabricating evidence to destroy someone's career, or using company resources to coordinate a smear campaign? Those kinds of scenes?" Jay's confident facade cracked slightly. "I don't know what nonsense you're talking about, but if you're implying—" "He's not implying anything, James," Elizabeth interrupted. "He's stating facts, facts we can prove." The CEO approached the microphone, tapping it for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for our annual address." As applause filled the room, Elizabeth leaned close to her husband. "You might want to prepare yourself, darling." "For what?" Jay hissed. "Justice," she replied, pressing the remote in her hand. The large projection screen behind the CEO flickered, interrupting his prepared slides. Instead, a series of emails appeared. Jay's instructions to Allison about targeting Michael, dated communications about fabricating workplace harassment claims, financial records showing company funds used to buy Allison's silence and cooperation. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. The CEO squinted at the screen, momentarily confused, then horrified as he realized what was being displayed to the entire company and its most important clients. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, looking around wildly. Jay lunged toward the AV booth. "Turn it off, this is unauthorized." But the technician, following Elizabeth's earlier instructions, had locked the system. The evidence continued to unfold on screen. Screenshots from the group chat Juliana had provided, internal IT logs showing backdated emails fabricated against Michael, and most damning of all, financial records of company resources used for personal vendettas. That's all fabricated," Jay shouted, looking increasingly desperate. Elizabeth stepped forward. "Is it, James? Then perhaps you'd like to explain why your digital signature appears on each of these fund transfers, or why the board has never approved these special projects?" Allison grabbed Jay's arm. "Do something," she hissed, but the damage was already done. Board members were huddled together, whispering urgently. Several were already on their phones, presumably calling legal counsel. The CEO stood frozen at the podium, his prepared speech forgotten. Juliana emerged from the crowd, phone in hand. "It's all true. I've been part of it, and I can't live with it anymore." Her voice trembled but held firm. "Allison and Jay have been systematically targeting people for years. I helped them with Michael, just like I helped them with Mark before him." Gemma stepped up beside her. "I have IT records proving the harassment claims against Michael were fabricated on company servers, using Jay's authorization codes." The room erupted in chaos. Amid the confusion, Michael noticed Mark Davidson, the previous victim who had been forced to leave town, entering through a side door accompanied by a stern-looking woman in a tailored suit who he recognized as the company's chief legal counsel. Jay's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. "So you think you can come in here and destroy me?" he snarled at Michael. "In my company, at my event?" "It's not destruction, Jay," Michael replied calmly. "It's accountability." "You orchestrated all of this," Allison accused, her perfect makeup now streaked with angry tears. "You couldn't handle that I chose someone better than you, so you—" "This isn't about me, Allison," Michael interrupted. "It's about a pattern. You and Jay have been doing this for years, ruining lives for your advancement and his entertainment. It stops tonight." The chief legal counsel pushed through the crowd to reach the CEO, whispering urgently in his ear. His face paled as she continued speaking, occasionally gesturing toward the screen still displaying evidence. Finally, the CEO stepped back to the microphone. "In light of these serious allegations, James Crawford is suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. Security will escort him from the premises." Two security guards materialized beside Jay, whose bluster instantly deflated. "You can't do this. I built this company's marketing division from nothing, and apparently used it as your personal playground," the CEO replied coldly. "Take him out." Now, as Jay was escorted toward the exit, his face a mask of shocked disbelief, Allison frantically looked around for support. But her carefully cultivated social circle was already disintegrating, former friends turning away to distance themselves from the scandal. "What about me?" she demanded of the CEO. "You can't possibly believe I was involved." The chief legal counsel stepped forward. "Ms. Reed, the evidence suggests you were a willing and active participant. Your company credentials have been suspended as well. Please leave with dignity, or security will assist you." Allison's eyes found Michael across the room. "This is all your fault," she hissed. "You'll regret this." "I already regret the 3 years I spent believing in you," Michael replied quietly. "But not tonight, never tonight." As Allison was escorted out, the remaining guests erupted in excited chatter. The scandal would dominate Savannah society conversation for months. Elizabeth turned to Michael, a satisfied smile on her elegant face. "Phase 1 complete," she said. "The board will have no choice but to conduct a full investigation now. James will never work in this industry again." "And the divorce?" Michael asked. Elizabeth's smile turned predatory. "After this, I'll get everything. The house, the investments, even that ridiculous boat he loves so much." The CEO approached them, his expression grave. "Mrs. Crawford, I want to assure you that the board takes these allegations extremely seriously. We had no idea." "Of course you didn't," Elizabeth cut him off smoothly. "James was quite skilled at compartmentalizing his indiscretions. But now you do know, and I trust you'll take appropriate action to make things right." "Absolutely." He turned to Michael. "Mr. Bennett, on behalf of Coastal Dynamics, I apologize for what you've endured. Rest assured, we'll be contacting your employer to correct the record." As the evening wound down, Michael found himself on the riverfront terrace, taking a moment alone amidst the chaos. The moonlight danced on the Savannah River, steamboats drifting past with their twinkling lights. For the first time in weeks, he felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. Mark Davidson joined him at the railing. "Not exactly how I pictured justice, but I'll take it." "Me too," Michael agreed. "What happens now?" "The legal team wants statements from all of us tomorrow. Civil suits will follow. Elizabeth's evidence combined with what we've gathered." Mark shook his head in wonder. "They're finished. Professionally, financially, socially." Gemma appeared with champagne flutes. "I think this calls for a toast." As they raised their glasses, Michael caught sight of Juliana speaking earnestly with the company's HR director, presumably giving her statement about her role in the conspiracies. "To consequences," Michael said, lifting his glass. "To fresh starts," added Mark. As they clinked glasses, Michael's phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. A." He showed the others, who exchanged concerned glances. "Don't worry," Elizabeth said, having approached silently. "Wounded animals always lash out before they retreat. She has no power anymore." Michael nodded, pocketing his phone. The battle had been won, but he sensed the war wasn't quite over. Allison's final move was yet to come. 3 days after the gala, Savannah was still buzzing with the scandal. The local business journal ran a front-page story about Jay's suspension pending investigation. Social media overflowed with speculation and gossip. Michael's phone hadn't stopped ringing with calls from friends and colleagues offering belated support or fishing for details. He'd returned to work at the architectural firm, where the partners had issued a formal apology after receiving clarification from Coastal Dynamics' legal department. His reputation was on the mend, but the experience had changed him. He viewed relationships, professional and personal, with new eyes, more cautious but also more appreciative of genuine loyalty. It was a muggy Thursday evening when Pete knocked on his hotel room door. "Got a lady downstairs asking for you," the old man said. "Says her name's Allison, looks like she's been crying. Want me to send her up or tell her to take a hike?" Michael considered for a moment. "Send her up, but stay close if you don't mind." "Don't worry, son. I got my Louisville Slugger behind the desk," Pete winked. "Old Agnes taught me never to trust a woman who cries pretty." Minutes later, Allison stood in his doorway. Her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a simple blouse. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, an attempt to look like the woman Michael had first fallen for 3 years ago. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. Michael stepped aside silently. She entered, immediately noticing the sparse hotel room with his few possessions nearly packed. "You're leaving?" "Found a new apartment. Signing the lease tomorrow." Michael remained standing, arms crossed. "What do you want, Allison?" She sank onto the edge of the bed, clutching a large manila envelope. "Everything's falling apart, Michael. Jay's being investigated by the company. His wife is divorcing him and taking everything. My friends won't return my calls. The press keeps calling for statements." Her voice cracked. "I've been fired. My reputation is ruined." "Sounds like consequences," Michael replied, unmoved. "Again, what do you want?" Allison's demeanor shifted, her vulnerability giving way to something harder. "I want to make a deal." She held up the envelope. "I have information on everyone involved. Things that could hurt Elizabeth, Juliana, even you." "Blackmail? That's your play?" "I prefer to call it insurance." She opened the envelope, removing several documents. "Did you know Elizabeth had an affair 3 years ago? Or that Gemma was once fired for embezzlement but had the record expunged? Everyone has secrets, Michael, even your precious new allies." Michael studied her for a long moment. This was the real Allison, calculating, manipulative, viewing relationships as transactional. How had he missed it for 3 years? "What's your offer?" he asked, playing along. Relief flashed across her face. "You get everyone to back off. No lawsuits, no criminal charges. In exchange, these documents stay private." "And what do you get?" "A settlement from Jay, enough to start over somewhere new." Her eyes glinted. "It's a fair deal, Michael. Everyone walks away intact." Wordlessly, Michael took out his phone. "Who are you calling?" Allison demanded. He ignored her, speaking into the phone. "She's here." "With evidence?" A pause. "Yes, just as you predicted." Michael ended the call and turned back to Allison. "That was Elizabeth's attorney. They've been expecting this move." As if on cue, his phone pinged with an incoming message. He showed the screen to Allison. It was a video of her entering the hotel, envelope in hand, with a timestamp from 20 minutes ago. "Elizabeth has had you under surveillance since the gala. The hotel security cameras, traffic cameras along your route here." Michael's voice was calm. "Did you really think you'd be allowed to play one last card without anyone noticing?" Allison's composure cracked. "You set me up." "No, Allison. You set yourself up." Michael took out his own phone and began recording. "Would you mind repeating your blackmail attempt for the record?" "Stop that!" She lunged for his phone. Michael easily sidestepped her, continuing to record as she grew increasingly agitated. "This is harassment. You're stalking me. Should I read back your text from 2 hours ago asking to meet, or play your voicemail from yesterday?" Michael remained steady as she unraveled. "The difference between us, Allison, is that I document everything now, a habit I learned from you and Jay." With surprising quickness, Allison snatched the envelope and bolted for the door. Michael made no move to stop her. In the hallway, she nearly collided with Pete, who was polishing a doorknob with suspicious attentiveness. "Everything all right, Mr. Bennett?" the old man asked, eyes never leaving Allison. "Just fine, Pete. Ms. Reed was just leaving, for good." Allison glared at them both before storming toward the stairs, her heels echoing down the hallway. Pete chuckled. "Agnes would have had a name for that one." "I bet she would," Michael smiled. "Thanks for standing by. Any time, son. Some people gotta learn the hard way that karma doesn't need any help finding its mark." The following morning, Michael's phone exploded with notifications. A video was circulating online. Allison's meltdown in the hotel hallway captured by security cameras. Her wild accusations and threats clearly audible. Public opinion, already turning against her after the gala revelations, solidified into universal condemnation. By afternoon, news broke that Jay had resigned rather than face termination, forfeiting his golden parachute. The company announced an internal investigation into all aspects of the marketing department's operations, with full cooperation from former employees like Juliana. Mark Davidson's attorney released a statement announcing civil proceedings against both Jay and Allison for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And Allison? The final humiliation came in the form of social media posts from her parents in Atlanta, announcing that their misguided daughter would be returning home to reflect on her poor choices and rebuild her character. The carefully crafted image she'd cultivated in Savannah had crumbled completely, leaving her no choice but to retreat to the suburban life she'd once disdained. 2 weeks later, on a perfect spring evening, Michael hosted a small gathering at his new apartment in a converted warehouse overlooking the river. The space was open and airy, with exposed brick walls and large windows, nothing like the carefully decorated downtown apartment he'd shared with Allison. Elizabeth was there, elegantly sipping champagne and discussing her plans to rebrand her family's charitable foundation now that her divorce was finalized. Pete had come too, looking uncomfortable but pleased in a freshly pressed shirt, regaling Gemma with stories of the hotel's colorful history. Mark had driven down from Atlanta with his new girlfriend, both of them relaxed in a way Michael envied but was slowly working toward. As conversations flowed around him, Michael stepped out onto his small balcony. The Savannah River stretched before him, cargo ships and pleasure boats creating a constantly shifting tableau. The city lights reflected on the water, a mosaic of possibilities. "Mind some company?" a soft voice asked. He turned to find Juliana at the doorway, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Their friendship had developed gradually over the past weeks, built on shared experiences and mutual respect, rather than convenience or calculation. "Always welcome," he replied, accepting the offered glass. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, leaning against the railing beside him. Michael considered the question. "I was just thinking about how differently things turned out than I expected when Allison first told me about her affair." "Regrets?" "No," he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "Not about how things ended, just that I didn't see clearly sooner." Juliana nodded. "We all have blind spots when it comes to people we care about." Inside, laughter erupted, as Pete apparently reached the punchline of a long story. The sound was genuine, unburdened, so different from the calculated social chuckles that had characterized gatherings with Allison and her circle. "What about you?" Michael asked. "Any regrets about how things played out?" "Only that I didn't speak up sooner," Juliana admitted. "But I'm learning to forgive myself for that. We can't change the past, only how we move forward from it." Michael raised his glass. "To moving forward, then?" As they clinked glasses, his phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from his firm. The historic district renovation project had been approved for the next phase, with Michael named as lead architect. Another piece of his rebuilt life falling into place. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down and guests began to depart, Elizabeth pulled Michael aside. "I wanted you to know. James is leaving Savannah. Heading west, apparently. His reputation is in tatters. His assets depleted by the divorce. He'll never work in corporate America again." Michael nodded, feeling not satisfaction, but a quiet sense of closure. "And you? What's next for Elizabeth Crawford?" She smiled, more genuine than he'd ever seen from her. "I'm reclaiming my family name, Elizabeth Montgomery, and focusing on the foundation. There's something liberating about shedding a false identity, isn't there?" "There is," Michael agreed. "Though I'm still figuring out who I am without all of this defining me." "That's the best part," Elizabeth said, squeezing his arm gently. "You get to decide that for yourself now." After everyone had left, Michael stood in his new space, still unfamiliar, but already feeling more like home than the apartment he'd shared with Allison ever had. The past months had stripped away pretenses and false connections, leaving behind something more authentic, both in his relationships with others and in his relationship with himself. His phone pinged with a text from Juliana. "Thanks for tonight? Coffee tomorrow?" Michael smiled as he typed his reply. "Looking forward to it." He set the phone down and walked to the window, gazing out at the Savannah night. The city that had witnessed his heartbreak now watched his renewal. There was poetry in that, he thought. Not the kind that came from dramatic gestures or elaborate revenge, but from the simple act of standing tall after being knocked down, of finding genuine connections after false ones. The best revenge, Michael had discovered, wasn't in destroying those who had hurt him, but in building something better from the ruins they'd left behind. As the lights of Savannah twinkled around him, he felt, for the first time in months, genuinely excited about what tomorrow might bring. "Hey there! Thanks so much for sticking with Michael's journey from betrayal to triumph. If you enjoyed watching justice unfold in Savannah, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. Your support means everything to us. We bring new compelling stories every single day, so feel free to explore our channel for more emotional roller coasters that'll keep you hooked from start to finish. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite moment in Michael's story? Was there a character you particularly connected with? Share in the comments below. See you tomorrow with another unforgettable tale that'll tug at your heartstrings.